All right, so there's that recording. All right, so I'm selecting my control, just selecting my controller box, and hit P, just like that. So wherever my box goes, my controller goes. And if I move this over here, my controller is still set at 0 because this is 0 movement for the controller itself relative to where it is in space with its parent, right? So right now, this is still set at 0. When I actually activate the controller, it'll go from 0 to, because this is such a huge scene, it'll go from 0 to 1200, give or take, right? But it'll stay local to this box, right? Okay. I'm going to move this back down to where it was, right? So I've parented this to the box, to the controller, to the box. And this is my happy slider and my happy box, right? I'm going to Control D to duplicate this, and I'm going to do a sad slider and sad slider box. And whenever you duplicate, it also adds the number 1 or 2 or 3, whatever the number is. So you want to take that off the end. Don't forget that. This controller is still set at 0. This box is not. So freeze transformations. This is its default location. I'm going to duplicate this again. Move it over. This is surprise. SURPRISE. And surprise box. SURPRISE. I'm spelling it because people get surprise wrong all the time. Freeze transformations. Duplicate it again, and this is our crazy. Crazy. Control, crazy, slider, box. Take the 1 off the end. And we're going to duplicate it one more time. And this is going to be for the bridge. And this is going to go on mine across the top. However you want to do this is up to you. But I like to have my bridge as a separate control type. I'm going to make that a little bit larger to kind of align with the width of these other objects. And freeze transformations and name it bridge slider box control and bridge slider control. And finally, just for the sake of my layout, I'm going to duplicate this one last time. I'm going to scale it. I'm going to delete the slider because I duplicated both. And I'm going to create one housing control box. This is simply for the sake of like interface design. Okay, and I'm just going to call this emotions or expressions, I should call it expressions UI underscore CTRL freeze transformations. There we go. And again, because I did my parent -R -S on the first one and I duplicated it, I don't have to do it over and over again. They all select as an individual thing. If you create separate boxes, you'll need to run this command like I talked about in the previous video. Okay? So I've created this whole interface. Now, I'm actually going to, no, that's okay, I think. Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. Okay. I just want to make sure because I rotated this sideways. Now, technically, I want to label these because I don't know what's what just by looking at them, right? So I want to make sure that these are clearly labeled. I'm going to make some room here. I'm going to scale that up, freeze transformations again. And I'm going to create type. Now, type by default creates this 3D type. I'm just going to go ahead and rotate that 90 degrees. And there's a node called type 1 by default. And what we want to do is we want to change this to your label. Oh, come on. Bridge. Now, I did create type, and then in the attribute editor, I went to the type 1 node and just changed it from the default 3D type to bridge. Now, you'll notice that this bridge is geometry, which means that it will render. These curves do not render. So what we want to do is we want to not have the geometry. We just want to have the curves. So if I go to geometry in the type node and click create curves from type. I've done that, and I can delete the geometry. So now I'm left with letters that I can use. Let me center my pivot to label my object. I don't know why that's rotated a little bit, but I'll get that. I don't know what happened to that, why it's rotated. But these curves are individual curves. And again, you don't want to have individual curves. You want a single object that's selectable. So I want to do this a lot. I'm going to take the top of my B, hit the down arrow, type this in. Actually, sorry, select one of my curves on my B, hit the down arrow, shift select another curve, type that in, parent -R -S, boom, it's combined them. Do the next one, shift down arrow, shift select, type it in, or hit the up arrow to redo the command, hit enter. Over and over again, down arrow, shift select, up, enter. Down arrow, shift select, up, enter. Select, down arrow, shift select.
Do you have to do it for them individually?
Yes, you do. Unfortunately, you do.
How did you make it flat again?
I don't have it up anymore, but under the type node, where it says type 1 in the geometry tab, it says create curves from type. down, select, up arrow, boom. Down, select, up arrow, boom, like that. Down, shift select, up arrow, like that. Last one, down, shift select, up arrow, hit enter. And now they're all selectable as a single piece. And I can unparent it from its original group, shift P, and delete the original group, keeping my outliner clean of excess junk. Now, I don't know what happened here as to why this is rotated. So I'm just going to try and get that as close as I can.
You can just go to the little channel thing.
No, I think I froze transformations on it already, so it's not going to allow me to do that. No. What freeze transformations does is it resets all of this to 0. There's no coming back from that unless you hit undo, and I've already done too much. So I'll just move that as close as possible and then line that up with the other curves. And that'll do. I'm going to scale that down and center that like this. And I want to do that for each one of these, right? For the sake of time in the demonstration, I'm not going to do that unless I have time at the end. But you should label each one of these. This one should have a happy, a sad, surprise, and a crazy, right? Each one of these should be labeled. And it should be done by curves, not by geometry, okay? Because geometry will show up in your final render. I have a lot of shapes. I don't have any history though, but I do need to freeze my transformations and name my curves, right? So this is going to be bridge label underscore. I might just call it CRV for curve because it's not a control technically. So there's that. All right. So once I have all this done, what I can do is parent the word bridge to my bridge box, because wherever my bridge box goes, the label should go with it, right? So I just selected the word bridge, shift selected the box, and hit P. And I want to do the same thing, or I've already done that for the slider. So that's cool. And I'll do that for each one of these. So happy will be parented to its box, sad will be parented to its box, surprise to its box, and crazy to its box. And then each of these boxes, and again, select the boxes, don't do a drag selection because that will select the individual controls as well, right? So each of the boxes will be parented to the external UI. So select each box, shift click, shift click, shift click, shift click, and then shift click the last thing is that external UI box and hit P, and they're now parented to the UI box, right? They can still move individually, right? And this can still move individually. But if I wanted to scale my UI box down, all of the controls go with it. And I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to make this the default size. So again, I'm going to freeze transformations on the UI box, and everything else is scaled proportionally with it. Now, I want these controls to control the expressions of the character, right? Remember, I still have those blend shapes. I'm going to go to Windows, Animation Editors, shape editor. And remember, I still have my fun little blend shapes. And what I want to do, each one of these blend shapes, if you remember, goes from 0 to 1 in order to activate. So what I want to do is I want to make it so that when I slide happy from 0 to 1200, it activates happy from 0 to 1. And so what I want to do is I want to use something that we've used before, I think. Did we do that? Let me think. Pretty sure we did. We use set-driven key in here? I think so. I'm trying to remember what it was for, though. Anyway, we're going to use set-driven key. Okay, so I'm going to go to my animation menu set because we're dealing with keyframes. And I'm going to go to key, set-driven key, set. Key, set-driven key, set. I can't remember what we used it for. I'm pretty positive we did. And that's going to open this box. Again, our driver is going to be the control, right? So when I have that selected, I need to click Load Driver. And that loads my happy slider control and all of its attributes. The driven is the slider of my emotions BS node. Okay? So I need to select this. It's easiest to do if you have the shape editor open, right click on it, select blend shape node. Right? If I, the toothbrush sign? Yeah, I was trying to remember for what though. I guess it was the controls. Well, the connection editor is different. But I assume it was the controls for like the actual control. It was the controls for the twist, the bend, the squash and stretch. Yeah. So it's the same thing. We're using the same thing. All right. So right click on your emotions BS node, select blend shape node, and that will give you access directly to the blend shape node and its controls, which are right here. Right. So, or you can just keep the shape editor open. With that selected, click Load Driven. And there it is. There's my blend shape node, and there's each of the blend shape sliders right there. So with my happy slider, this is going to be on translate Y, right? Okay. So with my happy slider selected, translate Y highlighted, my happy BS attribute is highlighted and turned off. Right? Because 0 position here equals 0 on my slider. I click key. Then I move my slider to as high as I want it to go. In this case, it looks like because I scaled my overall attribute or my controller down, if I did like 700, that's a good round number. That's going to be my height. And then I can slide my slider up to 1. Or I can click on the BS node and just type 1 right there and click key one more time. Now, when I move my slider from 0 to 1, it activates the blend shape. However, my blend shape slider, my slider here, my control, can go beyond currently, right? I don't want that to happen, but I'll deal with that later. I'm going to zero this back out. So I'm going from 0 to 700. I'll just do that for the rest of them. technically I can do these all at the same time. I'm going to select these three, load driver. My BS node is still there with the other attributes. If I do SAD, translate Y to my SAD blend shape, key it, move that up to 700, set my SAD slider to 1, key it. My surprise slider is at its default location. My surprise blend shape is at 0. Key it. Move it up to 700. Move my surprise slider to 1. Key it. I'll check these afterwards. Crazy is at its default location. And the slider is at 0. Just go ahead and key it. Let's move this up to 700. Move my crazy slider. Key it. And again, your values are going to be dependent on the size of your UI, the position, and all of that stuff, right? So 700 may not be your number, right? It might be 350. It might be 2.7. I don't know. Whatever your thing is, okay? But most importantly, my sliders work, right? If I zero these out on translate Y, that's perfect. Now I need to do my bridge. These sliders worked on translate Y. This one works on translate Z. All right. So I'm going to turn my bridge off. I want to make sure that that's turned off because this is my default location. I'm going to load that as my driver. And this is the bridge BS node. It's a different blend shape node. So I select the bridge BS node, right click, select blend shape node, load driven. Translate Z is at its default location at 0. So I highlight that, highlight my bridge. It's at 0. I key it. I move this over to, in this case, I'll do negative 750 because that's a good round number for that position. Turn my bridge on, key it, and now if I move my slider, it turns on. If I turn off my bridge, it turns off. I'm going to zero my bridge control, zero this slider control. We only have a few more things to do, and it's not even break time yet. So I want to keep these sliders from going beyond their boxes, much less outside of their boxes, or the ability to scale them or rotate them and stuff like that. So I need to lock down my interface. First of all, I know that I'm only using translate Y, right? So the rest of it, I can highlight, lock and hide selected. That's what you're trying to say, yes. Yeah, lock and hide selected. Right click, lock and hide selected. But I still have the ability to go beyond, right? I can't move it out. I can't rotate it or scale it, right? Okay. But I can still move it out of its box, or sorry, this way, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my attribute editor. And in the transform node, not the shape node, right? Not where it says NURBS curve. In the transform node, there's a drop down called limit information. I pop this open, and this has to do with translate. For some reason, it defaults to rotate. So I'm going to minimize rotate. And I'm going to open translate. And you'll see that my current is here highlighted. These others are grayed out and locked. I want this position to be my minimum. So I'm going to activate the checkbox and set this to 0. So now I can't go any lower than that. I want my maximum to be activated, and I know that my maximum is 700. So I'm just going to type that in, and now it won't go beyond those. I'm going to do that for all of these. Activate, activate, 0, 700. Activate, activate, 0. I'm just hitting tab, 700. Activate, activate, 0, 700. This one was negative 750, right? Because I'm going a different direction. I've rotated and I've freezed my transformation and all that stuff. This is going in the negative Z direction, 750 to turn on, right? So in this case, my oh, I didn't lock the other attributes yet on this one. This is translate Z, so I'm going to highlight everything but translate Z. Lock and hide selected. Did I do these ones? Oh, I didn't. That's translate Y, so oops.
This is possible for you, just like since they're all doing.
I could do them all
Just yeah, select
the
them
same.
all and then-
Yeah, I could do these 4 together, but not
Yeah.
this one. Yeah, I could do that. So I'm selecting these last 2 and highlight everything but translate Y. Right click, lock and hide selected. And so, yeah, it'll do them both at the same time. So, yeah, that's a good question. So for this one, it's doing translate Z. So I want to activate my min and my max. My minimum is negative 750 and my max is 0. So now it will go only like that. And technically, I could do the same for these interface pieces, right? This is its default location, but I don't want to take it out of my interface. So if I wanted to, I could make on translate Z, I could make this position its maximum upper left. So this would be positive, I'll just say positive 100 for my maximum. Why did it do that? Oh, because I activated it, it changed it to 1. So I can make that positive 100 as my max upper left corner. For translate Y, I can click this little arrow. I'll make that 216 and activate that so that this is my maximum upper. These little arrows will take what my current is and put it into either the min or max, left or right. And then I can take this down to the bottom left, find a place that I'm happy with being its minimum. Sorry, his bottom left, but my bottom right. And if I had negative 1217 on Y, use my arrow and then activate it. For this one, I'll do negative 99 on Z, arrow, activate it. So now this interface can only go within this box. And because I froze transformations on it, when I zero my translate, it goes back to its default position, right? So I can move this within the interface, but I can't move it outside of the interface, right? So I would want to do that for all of these. I can set my minimum and maximum like this, right? For each one of these. I want to make sure that I lock down this slider, the slider box, so that it can't do X. And I want to do that for all of those, right? So I want to lock, translate X, lock and hide. And I don't want to rotate. I could scale, lock and hide. I could scale if I wanted to scale this down to a smaller interface. But the problem is then I've like, it doesn't go as far to the left anymore because the scale is based on its original size, right? It can still go up and down, but you know. But I could leave scale if I wanted to. Here again, lock, translate X, lock and hide, and rotate for all of these. So I'll select these three, lock, translate X, and rotate. I can keep the visibility on because what if I want to hide this one for whatever reason? I can turn that off individually, right? And for the main UI, leave it alone. It's good. So I'm going to save as. I'm going to make sure I haven't forgotten anything. I'm going to test this, turn my bridge on. If you want to label on off or on off, that's fine. I'm used to left being off, right being on, right? Down being off, up being on. So you don't necessarily have to label those, but you could. Oh, he's so happily distraught. I'm so glad to see you. That's great. There's that. There's that. They all work. And I've locked them all down. But again, you want all of your labels. I don't know. Technically, I kind of want this to be a part of that, but whatever. All right. So now the last thing we need to do is we need to finish our hierarchy and hide things that are not necessary, right? Because when we're animating our character, we don't need to see all this, right? So I'm going to take all of my blend shape groups. I'm going to group those groups and call it blend shape group. Blend shape or shapes GRP. Take my squid main group and my blend shapes group and group those into a geo group. Take my expressions control UI, group it, and call that controls group. It's the same as we've done in the past. And then group those both together to create my character group, or in this case, I'm going to call it squid group. And I can take these blend shapes and create a layer. Blend shapes, layer, and deactivate visibility. I can also hide the blend shapes group visibility if I wanted to double that up, right? Same for my squid main group. I could call that character layer. But my main point is on this, I want my character to not be selectable, only the UI. If I wanted to create a UI group, I can do that. UI group, save, and I can either make that unselectable or I can make it visibility on and off and stuff like that, right? So when it comes down to it, this is what I should have, right? One group that contains everything. Everything is, you know, properly locked down, freeze transformations. I have all of my labels. I have all my sliders working. I've locked everything down so I can't move it outside of the UI, and I can't select the character or any geometry. All my blend shapes are hidden. That's it. So I'm going to save as version 8 and save as again, all caps final. Okay. You should have, when you turn in your projects, that final scene, and it's technically the exact same scene as your last number, right? But I'm going to be looking for that final. That's the file that I grade. Okay, so make sure you have that final scene in there. If you make changes after you create your final, save as 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's done. Save as, overwrite your final with a new final. Okay? But your final and your final number should be pretty much the exact same file. You know, you can move your camera or something like that. But it should be pretty well the same. Nothing should be different on the character and its functionality. All right. So it's break time and we're done, which means when we come back with break, y'all get to work and I can help you. Lab time. That's so rare in this class. I'm going to stop recording. And I'll